Hey, everybody out there in YouTube land. This is your T-shirted historian, and welcome to a Dungeons and Discussions. And with me is my host, Grim Jim.
Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are.
Yes,
Possibly good
yes,
evening.
yes. I'm gonna have a busy day today because not only am I doing this, but I'm gonna be doing Twig tonight. So busy T-shirt. And I'm still sick. So yeah, if I mute my mic every once in a while, it's because I want to not cough all over you guys on the air. Um, and mornings are tough for that.
And obviously, if your timing doesn't clash, you're going to watch Tabletopless tonight.
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah, yeah. In the future, we'll probably have to move things around a little bit, but
Yeah, because I'm
for
old
now,
and I have to bank sleep on Tabletopless days.
yes, I defer to the elder who is actually younger.
Yeah, it's not the years, it's the mileage.
Very much so. All right. So our topic of discussion today is one that is always cropping up on the forums, on the Twitters, on everything else, and that is total party kills. Or really, it's not so much even total party kills. I have not seen an actual TPK in a while. Especially with the way the rules work these days, with all the death saves and all that garbage. So usually I think that happens in mostly older systems or systems where the GM has declared that, 0 hit point equal death. But most modern games seem to have more of a saving grace for character death. And so this is really not so much total party kills, but it's also character death in general. But what do you think about that, Grim?
Uh, did you play in that Cypher system, The Strange, that I ran? You did,
I
didn't
did.
you?
I
That
did.
was a TPK.
That was a TPK. It was kind of a fade to black.
Yeah, but it was a TPK. But of course, that was a one shot. So the stakes are different there. I think you can afford to be less forgiving. You definitely don't tend to see save versus death anymore. That's certainly a factor. There's always a lot of get outs like death saves, or a poison progresses through multiple saves, so you have plenty of chances. Various story points, hero points, fate points, and things give you a get out
Mm-hmm.
in even deadly systems like Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. You've still got the fate point buyout. I think it reflects how overall taste in gaming has changed. Even before the dawn of the Sparkle Droll, I think things changed.
I am here, Fritz. I brought the Flammenwerfer.
The
Does it
Flammenwerfer!
does it worth Flammens?
Yes.
Hey, Aries.
Hello.
Okay, so the topic today is total party kills, character death in general, and stuff.
Oh, it should
And
happen every session. 100%.
ah,
Just
well, I mean
Not
that's the
Black
thing.
Leaf.
Well, that's what we were observing is that it doesn't seem to happen very often. Really, I mean, it can, and certainly you need to be ready for it when it does, because there is a tendency I have noticed for players to have this notion that their characters are invincible or have some kind of plot armor that the GM won't really kill their characters if they get themselves over their head in with a fight or something.
that's
And
actually 100% true.
Mhm.
In my first Iris campaign, all of my players were convinced. They didn't know they had plot armor, but they suspected that they did because they never were in any danger of dying. That's probably because it was 5th edition.
Mhm.
To
Yeah.
be honest, it's probably just due to this the system.
Mhm.
But when we moved to the next campaign, I made it a lot more challenging, and they thought it was refreshing. They're like, "Oh, I don't feel like I have plot armor anymore. This is great." Like they were like, "Yes, bring on the danger." Like, you know. But I'm not as a DM, I'm not out to kill my characters. That's not what I'm trying to do. I just want to present fun things for them to encounter, and if they make the bad decisions, then they might die or they might not, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a character death not so long ago myself, actually, right here on air. I was running Darwin's World, and I was using the Scarlet Heroes matrixing system for hit points. So characters aren't necessarily invincible, but they have a higher survivability rate because of the way I matrix hit points. However, we did have a character who kind of stubbornly refused to, back down, withdraw from a dangerous situation where there were overwhelming numbers, and I was getting pretty lucky with the dice. And they died. But there was no whinging, there was no complaining, there was no, he wasn't upset.
You didn't drop falling rocks on them, basically.
No. No, they entered a place where there were many ghouls. Like I think I put the number at something like on the order of a couple of hundred, which sounds unreasonable, but but the characters had proven that they could take on pretty big numbers and survive. Well, this was a case where all the other characters fled, and this one guy basically tried to do the "I will hold them off" thing, and he didn't.
Wow.
To
Well,
be
hey,
fair, though,
he had a heroic ending.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And he had been vacillating over whether to kill the character off anyway. So,
That is true, yeah.
and he had been incredibly lucky putting himself in ludicrous situations in a couple of the previous sessions and
True.
surviving. So it kind of made sense, and the fact that they kind of wanted a new character,
Yeah.
that helps, I think.
Yeah, he was constantly pushing his luck as a character, because I think he did want that character to die. And his luck just eventually ran out. And that's kind of how it goes. But that's a case of where I think player agency took more of a hold than GM fiat or just letting the dice fall where they may. Because he had the option to run along with the other characters. Nobody told him stay there. Nobody told him, keep fighting. Nobody told him cover our escape or anything. That was completely his choice to stand there. He knew there was a possibility he could be killed, and he did. So under that circumstance, I think that was a justified kill.
It definitely changes the character of a game, and the way you play it when death is on the line. Playing in Simon's Old School Essentials game, dungeon crawling in that, we were barely getting through a couple of rooms a session because we were so careful. It's double checking, triple checking everything. Making sure we described how we were opening the chests away from us and all of that sort of thing. Once you're into that sort of environment, as long as you have a somewhat forgiving GM and you act reasonably, what kills you is your own stupidity or lack of preparedness, which is different to like a capricious roll of the dice at some point.
Django has a good thing here. He says, I have a friend who will never take a seat at my table because he doesn't like the idea that Lamentations of the Flame Princess is deadly. He's too much in love with 5e. Yeah, Lamentations is deadly. And I love Raji. I do. I need to have him on this channel again. But he has written a couple of fuck you dungeons. and and they will kill your character. They will kill your character very, very quick. And there's a point behind it because, he's basically trying to tell you, it's like, okay, just because there's something here doesn't necessarily mean you should investigate it. Or just because something is here, don't expect that I'm going to, pull punches and not kill you. And it is a low-level adventure that I'm talking about, Tower of the Stargazer. It's, like for 1 to 4th level characters. So presumably, I guess the idea is because the characters are such a low level, you're not really attached to them yet. So if they die, it's like, oh, well, just roll up another one.
That's something DCC does well, I think, with the idea of the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
Is you create a fistful of characters so you don't get over invested in one or the other. And then the whole point of the first adventure is to kind of winnow them out, kill a few off, and allow you to pick which one you like the best. So it really instills in you the idea that the world is deadly and dangerous, and you shouldn't get overly attached to any single character right from the get-go. That attachment is something that comes later on.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, and there is a definite difference between losing a character at 1st through 3rd level through losing a character that is like 8th level or something. And we actually used to say this at the table too. It's like, well, character was only 3rd level. I mean, realistically, they're not going to go and have the funds and the means to go and bring that character back from the dead.
Yeah.
And, Dungeons & Dragons actually tried to address it in their own way, too. If you played the Menser Beckme version of Dungeons & Dragons, they have a solo adventure where you start out as a fighter, a named character, and you basically play like a little solo role-playing game. And one of the characters that you meet in there is a paladin, a really cute-looking paladin. Well, during the course of the adventure, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how well you roll. It doesn't matter what course of actions you take. That character will die. And it's just kind of like a, it's like a harsh reality of things. Because, this is, Beckme was made for, 10-year-olds and stuff. And I guess it was kind of getting them used to the idea early on as like, hey, character death happens, and it's sad, and it's okay to be sad, but it's, you don't go and throw a fit and tell the GM, that he's a fascist or something for killing your character off or taking away agency from you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've had a lot of back and forth with player agency in the past few weeks. It's gotten to the point, maybe this is just my opinion, so if you disagree, that's fine. But I feel like a lot of people, especially in the quote-unquote OSR, use player agency now in a way that it should not be used. Mm-hmm. Like that term is used as basically a shield for, I didn't get my way during the game. I didn't get to do what I wanted to do, so therefore you're taking away my agency.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that type of thing. And that's annoying to me because that's not what it's supposed to be. To me, player agency is, can my character make decisions on his own? If the answer is yes, then they have agency. If they cannot make decisions, then they don't. It's as simple as that to me.
And that brings up a good point from the audience. Go ahead, Graham.
So there's player agency and character agency.
Yeah.
Which are two separate but intertwined things.
Oh, yeah. Probably. I mean, that's more complex than I would like to, that I was thinking of. But if you really want to simplify it, I think it ultimately it leans towards the character. But, there's a lot of different layers and things to that as well.
Kip Marlowe, who's one of our really cool friends, says, my most recent TPK was running Lamentations of the Flame Princess, not safe for work, and I know that module, using the D sanction rules. And it wasn't the mechanics that killed the party as such, but the narrative consequences of an action in the module as written. And that kind of brings up another question, too. There are, especially older editions, modules and adventures that are written to where an in-game consequence of something that your character does can kill them instantly. No save, no nothing. If your character does something stupid like, okay, I'm a first level, there's a clearly labeled potion of purple wyvern, venom on there, the deadliest, most toxic substance in the entire planet, and you drink it, what are you going to do? Modern conventional thinking would be like, well, you give the guy a saving throw. And I'm like, well, it's the most toxic, most deadly poison on the planet. It kills everything. Well, okay, but there's a 1 in a million chance I might be immune.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So
roll a D million.
Yeah, roll a D million. No, but if it's a circumstance like that, I might give a player a roll, especially if they're pretty invested in their character, or it's a small party. I tend to be a little bit more forgiving for small parties. It's kind of like, okay, there's not very many of you. A character death with a party this size at this low of a level is pretty crippling because it really hurts your resources. So, maybe I might give them some kind of save. Like, okay, yeah, there's a D100 roll, there's a 10% chance that your character is somehow one of those rare, ungodly people who somehow have a gift where they're not affected by this. So roll a D100, and on a 0, 1 through 10, you survive. And that's the best chance I give you. And that brings another question into scale too. It's kind of like, does the size of the party affect whether or not you're more or less willing to do a total party kill? If you got like 9 or 10 players playing the game, are you more likely to want to winnow some of them out or put some of them on the sidelines by having to build new characters or kill them off, or you're just going to let the dice fall where they may, or,
Well,
does any of that have an effect?
A big group is less likely to suffer a casualty just due to the sheer amount of resources, attacks, spells, and everything that they have, while a small group is more likely to. But, retreating from the dungeon is always an option.
And that again brings that other component into play. It's like, how often do you see characters retreat from something that's too dangerous for them?
Not often enough.
No. 9 or 10 characters might have a good chance of taking on, something like an Etten. A few of them will probably get squashed in the process if they're low level.
That's what hirelings are for.
Which is another thing too, is I notice a lot of people don't get hirelings these days. Even in games that we run on Sundays and stuff, people don't really tend to pick up hirelings.
I don't think. I think they feel that it takes them out of playing their own character, and certainly once you take into account familiars and pets and summoned creatures and everything else, it does get a bit much after a while.
We had a cleric who we used to make a joke. We used to say that he fights by proxy, because usually his opening salvo of attacks would be like he'd throw out the magic weapon thing that clerics can cast, which will fight on its own, and then he would do a summon monster or summon animal. So he'd be throwing out another proxy, and then he would just kind of hide in the back and either run heals or whatever like that. And druids are even more extreme examples of that because they can do the same thing. Plus, they have a pet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, you know, the power creep is different depending on which edition you get. Third edition and fifth edition definitely give low level players a lot better chances to survive than, say, like first edition or Lamentations. Scarlet Heroes, my favorite, drink, has one of the best small player base systems set up, I think, because it's like, yeah, it's designed around a solo game. So every time you're adding more characters to it, it gets your party gets really exponentially powerful because of the way that the hit points matrix, but also because there's rules built into the game where your character can choose to take, you know, permanent injuries in order to survive in encounters. Let's see what. Disciples of Logris' players seem to be either overconfident or overcautious with little. Yeah, they're either, you know, moving through the dungeon, you know, like you know, taking an hour to clear a room because they're too busy checking everything and trying to make sure that nothing's going to spring on them, or they're waltzing through the dungeon like lollygag, I don't care, you know, kill me, whatever.
It's funny because my players are some of the smartest people in the world. Like Frank, for instance, who's my co-author, is a multi-talented genius who can do almost anything. But at the table, when playing a role-playing game, players, for some reason, they just act dumb. And I don't know. Maybe they're just not, they're not fully connected to the game world or to the expectation of the setting or to the expectation of how the game is played. Maybe they don't know the rules. Maybe they're just not paying attention because they've had a few drinks. I don't know. It's just, you know, sometimes players act dumb and you have to deal with it.
Yeah. Joe from Big Geek, I've talked to him before, and he has said on more than one occasion, he is the guy who will do all the stupid stuff in the game. You know, he'll pull the lever, push the button, walk across the weirdly tiled floor or whatever, just to see what happens. And I admire that kind of play style too, because it's kind of like there's something about it's like, okay, I'm not so attached to this character that I won't take a risk. You know, and
you need someone to do that.
You do, because it's like the GM likes to have fun too. You know, I don't go into a game with the expectation that oh no, these guys are going to thwart every single thing that I do, so I have to build a counter to everything that they will do. And I've seen GMs who will do this. They will overthink how best to injure, harm, or kill their PCs because they stop playing the game. They start playing the person who is playing the character. You know what I mean?
Mm. Sometimes that's good though, but that's more about evoking mood and so on. Like if you know someone is creeped out by something, you might include it in the game if you want to create a more nervous, horrific atmosphere, but that's less to do with the mechanics and characters dying.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of gotten to the point where I don't really care what a player does in the game. It's like, you know, eat that mushroom, explore this den, or don't. Do what you want to do. That's fine. Just don't bore me. You know, don't sit in town and try to start a business. Don't get involved in some kind of needlessly dull plot that requires me to think of 100 NPC names and organizations and, the complete, infrastructure of a city or something. Don't do those things. It's just like, yeah, I can do those things given time and prep, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not the, you're not the only person sitting at the table. There's somebody else sitting there who probably doesn't want to do those things. They maybe they want to go and get into the action. They want to do stuff. Have some consideration for other people. Especially me, since I'm the GM. It's like, don't bore me to death. Go do something fun. I don't care what it is. Just go do something fun. You're an adventurer.
Clearly, they're having fun with Small Business Simulator. So
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, well that's cool too, but this is not the right game for that.
That's
and maybe
happened to me before.
yeah, and I'm sure that's happened to other people. I mean, let me give you a perfect example of the things that I don't like to do in a game is the damn shopping trip RP.
Yeah, that happened to me. I think I mentioned it like many months ago, but I'll tell the story again.
Uh-huh.
I'm a narrative guy, so I'd have narrative things that happen in the game. I'm sorry, guys. Ugh, I'm not what. But anyway, the players were about to embark on the final journey of their adventure. They were about to get on the back of Pegasi, and it was super epic. And they were going to fly off, and they were going to get on Pegasi, and it's the most epic moment in the whole campaign. And all of a sudden, one of my players pipes up and says, hold on. I need to go shopping. I need arrows. I'm like, oh, why you... I just gave him arrows. Like, normally I don't fudge dice rolls or fudge anything, but I'm like, dude, you have arrows, okay? Like, they're 1 silver piece. Like, you have them. Just go ahead and take some fucking arrows. Just go ahead and have them. Like, who cares? Let's continue, please. That was like, my moment where I'm like, dude, just forget about the shopping. You have arrows. It's okay. You don't need to shop for them.
Yeah, I hate shopping trip RP so much. I wish there was a way to get around it. I really do. Before going,
I usually either just hand wave it, yeah, buy whatever you need, let's get this done as quickly as possible, or make an event out of it. Because there are certain things in fiction that amount to shopping trips that are actually really fun, like the floating market in Neverwhere, or Licorice Street in Imagica, goblin markets, or where Metropolis in Cult bleeds over into the real world, and you might suddenly find a weird market stall with ungodly knows what on sale. So I think you can turn it into something fun, but I wouldn't want to roleplay them out every time, certainly.
yeah. And Mercurius has a good point here. Yeah, it's like, go to the town festivals. Yeah. If you're going to do a shopping trip RP, well, first off, the whole notion that there is a store that is like totally dedicated to the sales and stuff is kind of like a non-medieval notion, because the medieval notion was like, people would just kind of roll up with whatever their goods were and set up a stall, and then at the end of the day they'd pull it away. Which is the kind of RP I actually prefer as far as markets go. And I'm okay if there is a shopping trip RP if they're in a decent sized city, because then you can kind of make an adventure out of it. You can describe, it's like, as you walk through the marketplace, you smell the intense smells of, oils and greases cooking, as well as, vegetables and fine meats and other things, as people are assembling their wares and putting them out for you.
At this point in the game, depending on how early on the players are, they will have been through that already. Like they've been to the marketplace. It's over. It just needs to be the shopping part is over. Just whatever they want, just pretend it's a video game and give it to them and deduct their gold. To me, anyway, that's just me. Like, you can still go through it, I'm sure, but it's like it gets to a point where it's so mundane that it just drags down the table.
Yeah, I think the first time should be a fun and novel experience, but it's like, exactly. The 50th time, it's kind of like, Jesus, man, you know what the equipment list looks like. Just use it and go.
Sometimes it's nice to have a downbeat. I mean, not before you all mount Pegasi and fly off. You shouldn't be worrying about whether you have enough rations or whether your boot needs rehealed at that point. But sometimes it just gives things enough room to breathe, or gives you a little bit of a break as a games master. You don't need to be thinking on your toes quite so much. And it can be a feature rather than a bug, like John Wick visiting Peter Serafinowicz's character, the sort of gun sommelier.
Oh
Yeah, that's a great scene, and it's also a lull and a pause in the action before what comes next, and that could be a good story beat.
And that was kind of interesting too, because it was definitely geared towards the the gun porn heads,
But also funny.
and also funny. Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, we really haven't talked about what actually happens when you do a total party kill. I mean, we've talked about individual character deaths and things, but what happens when you do actually get lucky and kill an entire party? And by lucky, I really mean it's very rare that a GM sets out to completely kill every single PC in the party. It kind of tends to happen by accident, or sometimes there's a story beat that requires all the characters to have failed and died. But what do you do? How do you recover from it? I mean,
Find a new group, because everyone's now fallen out with you and deleted you off social media.
Yeah.
yeah, that tends to be a common response, unfortunately. And I think it's very knee jerk.
Well, I mean, a party defeat doesn't have to be a kill necessarily. You know, people can be captured or beaten. Someone just mentioned an iron golem. I mean, what were its instructions? Will it have finished everybody off, or might someone self-stabilize and wake up after a few hours with, broken bones but still alive?
Exactly. People talk a lot about, on Twitter and places about fudging dice rolls, and you're not supposed to do that. But the rules, even in a game like AD&D, allow for different things. Correct? They don't have to die. There's negative 10 HP. They can be captured. They can be immobilized. They can be put to sleep. Let's be perfectly honest here. Unless you're playing a very specific type of war game, where it's expected that the characters are going to be replaced quickly with replacements that are ready to go. They're in the wings, ready to go. Players don't like to have their characters die because it's inconvenient and it just slows everything down. Now, I'm not saying to fudge dice rolls, of course not. The dice lie where they lie, but there are alternatives. There is certainly a lot of options you can take to keep the game rolling, and maybe even introduce some new elements into the game. Like maybe the players wake up in a prison, maybe they're in a dungeon, they're injured, they have to escape. That can be pretty fun too.
Forced to work in the sex mines of the Drow Empress.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, terrible. Well, to Drow it would be terrible, but
I mean, Mercurius says there are examples of people waking up in a crocodile's den after. There are examples of people falling 3,500 feet out of an airplane and landing, and the only injury they have is a broken shin. There's weird things that happen to people, and sometimes they're almost unexplainable, but it does happen.
yeah. And Kit has a good point. Is that TPKs and one shots or mini campaigns, who cares? But in a full on campaign that's tied to the character's previous actions, that is a problem. Of course, one can come back as the nephew of. Yeah.
Yeah. Or another adventuring party that's sent to find out what happened to the ones that died.
Yeah.
That can be a good hook.
I have done that.
Things rolling. Yeah.
I've done that before. I have done somehow you all wake up, and your bodies have been discarded into a mass grave, or something like that. And usually there may be a divine power involved that maybe says, it's like, hey, it's not really your time to go yet. Or they could have a mysterious benefactor, or it could just be whimsy, or maybe that's the key to unlocking their special ability or something. You had to die.
But I mean, so as Arius was saying, about war games, that's where RPGs came from. Watch Secrets of Blackmoor.
Yeah.
And so characters were considered to be kind of disposable until they got to higher levels and you got more story and stuff rolling. Kit talks about one-shots, mini campaigns. The game used to be much more one adventure at a time focused, so there didn't used to be these big overarching plot lines necessarily. The world might persist, but the characters might not. But this increased story and character focus goes back way longer than people think, I think, because it goes at least back to, 1984, when Dragonlance first started coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And the Dragonlanceification of D&D was this much heavier emphasis on story and character and the importance of longer campaigns and story arcs and so on, even if the rules didn't necessarily support it. And then things have gone so far the opposite direction now of war games, that now the war game approach feels novel and interesting and different.
Mm-hmm. Ironcaster has a good question here. He says, how do you feel about using TPKs to wrap up a campaign for a plot-related reason? I mean, if it's the end of a campaign and it's a TPK, my favorite example of that is, Greg, I know you've probably played this. How many guys have played Phantasy Star 2?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome game. Awesome
Fuck
game.
that game.
Awesome game. Yeah, I cried a lot when Nay died. But when you get to the very last boss of the game, you defeat the boss, and then it's kind of like the way it ends. It's like pretty much the entire world is coming at them, and it just shows, pictures of them all, wielding their weapons grimly because they know they're all gonna die right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was pretty much that was an ending in a TPK, but it's like the heroes were going to go out on their feet.
Well, my favorite is Final Fantasy 3 for Super Nintendo, because the bad guy wins, the world is destroyed, and like you wake up and you're just like, you're Celis, the one chick, like you're on a deserted island, the whole world is destroyed. There's nothing left. That's like super grim. I like that the best. It's like, how often do you actually see the heroes completely fail and the villain wins? That's pretty cool.
It is different. And I don't know. I mean, if it's the end of a campaign, a TPK seems like it's appropriate because that helps you get the next campaign started.
Yeah, but none of the characters actually die. I mean, in Final Fantasy 3, you go around with your airship and you find them, and you have to go into dungeons, and you eventually uncover all of your previous companions. I think maybe one dies.
Yeah,
but yeah,
and there is that element too. Like I said, if you're ending a campaign and the characters are all going to get TPK'd, it's like, okay, well, that opens up a story for another campaign, and the next campaign could be find out what happened to those guys. Or,
I like it if it has a point. Like the heroic self-sacrifice. Or if it acts as like a capstone to the overall mood of what you've been going for. Like Mercurius mentioned the end of Blake 7. Avon lived, damn it. That just, after some meandering in that last season, it kind of reasserts the kind of grim reality of that setting that was established from the very first episode of the first season. So that kind of works there, and the characters kind of pass into legend as inspiration for future rebellions and so on. So
Yeah.
that works there. I've had games where characters have chosen to sacrifice themselves, rather than have something else happen, and that makes a good end to the campaign.
Yeah, Ironcaster brings up the end of Rogue One. It's like, yeah, they introduce a bunch of characters in the movie, and they all die by the end of the movie because, of course, they're not mentioned anywhere in the original Star Wars saga. But that's still a really good movie, and those are really good characters. And yes, they all die, and they're never mentioned after that. Nobody knows who they are.
But none of them were Bothans.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is mentioned very briefly, but still, the characters are not, they're not that.
No.
And hey, it's Ryan from Rolling Bones. He's here to support the new host of Rolling Bones. Yeah. Those of you who watched Rolling Bones last night, you got a rare treat because Ryan lost power about a couple of minutes into the interview. So I'm sitting there all alone waiting for his power to come back on. So I started ad-libbing, and I did a pretty good job. I was just kind of like, rolling off the cuff for about 30 minutes about stuff, waiting for his power to come back on before we finally just called it. But it was pretty funny. I don't know if Ryan is actually going to keep that episode or not. He may pull it. He may keep it. But either way, I had fun. Yeah, everybody keeps talking about Blake 7. I need to finish watching that. Yeah, and he says, end the campaign with a TPK to start the next one with the same characters in hell. That's an idea. I never thought about that.
Works better in some games than others.
Yeah. Some of the characters may not appreciate that. I'm a lawful good paladin. Guess what?
Actually, that reminds me. In the cult campaign that I ran, one of the characters died really early on, but I just let him keep playing as a zombie, slowly disintegrating, not really able to figure out what was wrong with him. But that seemed fitting for cult.
There is a supplement, I should say, not was, because I have it. It's on the shelf during 3.0 that came out called Ghost Walk, where you literally played a dead character or a character who had passed on, and that was your character because you had all kinds of abilities and everything all fleshed out and everything. And I always thought that was kind of curious, because early on in 3.0 we had a lot of character death. Simply because the characters were powerful, so the GM would keep ramping the stakes up to the point where it's kind of like, okay, we're dying here.
Yeah, 3rd edition, you could still die pretty easily at low level, but your survivability went up pretty quick.
Oh yeah. Pathfinder even more so. Pathfinder 1st edition, I should say.
I can't remember. Is there any advice on this in the 5th edition DM's guide?
Oh, I'm sure there is.
But no one ever reads it.
Nobody ever reads it.
I have read it, but I can't remember.
I can't remember. I mean, how many games of 5th edition have I actually run? Not very many.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that it's something you have to kind of manage is a relatively new one as well. Worrying about the mental health of your players and so on. There's these ideas of bleed that we spent decades trying to eradicate as a concept, but now we're all supposed to be worried about.
I mean, yeah, I understand getting attached to a character and being upset when that character dies. But hopefully by the time you're to that point, your GM will take pity on you and figure out a way to bring you back pretty quickly, or the rest of the party will work together to bring you back. I mean, now if it's a total party kill, and they're all beloved characters and everybody was really attached to them and stuff, maybe the GM should take that into consideration and either do the guess what? Even though your party was defeated, you all wake up, in a prison cell, or you all wake up in a slaver camp, or you all, you all wake up with your wounds bound. However, now you're weaponless, disarmed, and sitting in cages, in the goblin camp and, waiting to be eaten.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Yummy.
I mean, TPKs, just like any character death, doesn't mean the end of the character. It's my belief that characters don't really die until the player wants them to die. Unless they're like really low level. The guy who comes in the game at first level and he has the 30-page backstory. It's kind of like, well,
That
you're
sounds
only
like
a first
heresy.
level. Yeah,
Sounds
you're,
like OSR heresy. You're fired.
I know. But it still happens. I mean, it's like, okay, well, you got the first level character. He's got a heck of a backstory. You really had a lot of plans for this guy. Oh, should I take pity on you?
Well, that's why the one shots in the mini campaigns can be quite freeing, because you don't have to worry so much about all that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it used to be like a badge of honor that you survived the Tomb of Horrors or the Temple of Elemental Evil, saying, hey, I'm a badass player. I was really lucky, but I was also cunning enough to get through this module without dying. I used to run really hardcore horror games at IndieCon here in the UK. And it became a badge of honor for people to say, I managed to survive one of Grimm's Blood games. So
Well,
it's
it's
like
like,
a feature.
yeah. I mean, and then there is stuff like Call of Cthulhu. I famously remember it took me about an hour to build a character. And very first encounter in the game, like literally like 20 minutes into the game, my character gets into a fisticuffs with an Italian frogman. I mean, he wasn't a frog. He was just a guy in a
Not
suit.
a deep one.
Yeah. A guy in a wetsuit on a ship.
Yeah.
And my character got the crap beaten out of him because of some bad dice rolls. He fell overboard. And it was just kind of like, okay, your character's dead. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. Because it's not like he's going to go over there and retrieve me. And, being knocked unconscious in the water.
Yeah, that seems odd to me, because usually the first couple of sessions of Call of Cthulhu are investigation before you get into any altercations.
Yeah, well, I got lucky. I mean, the guy had an adventure and it was on a boat, and I don't really know what the rest of it was, because it's like, I kind of said, okay, well, my character's dead. I guess I don't have to sit here anymore. Just went on, did something else. It was at a convention, so I wasn't really super duper invested in the character of the game anyway.
They should have had pre-gens.
Yeah, he should have, but he didn't. And that's another thing too. I mean, if you have pre-gens, what is ostensibly you want to play a pre-gen as if it's an actual character that you rolled up with the same odds of survivability and stuff. But let's be serious. Okay, I mean, guys out there in the audience and those of y'all who are going to be listening to this on the back, how many times have you gotten a pre-gen and just put on the stupid hat and just said, you know what, I'm just going to go for broke with this character because, I don't care. It's a disposable character. It's a pre-gen. I hate pre-gens. Let's do every dumbass thing that we shouldn't be doing just because it's a pre-gen.
The effort I go to making pre-gens, and you go and say that.
Well, we haven't thrown them away yet. I thought the last pre-gen I got was kind of useless at first, but it ended up being kind of like really powerful towards the end.
Which one was that? That was
the shield, broken shields.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just wasn't your kind of character, really. I think.
Yeah, it wasn't my kind of character, but I made it work at the end.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool. There wasn't really a lot of chances to get TPK'd in that game.
No, that was heavy investigative.
Yeah, which I normally I despise heavy investigative, but I'm sorry. I'm just more of a, let's walk in, kick the door in, and beat the shit out of stuff. But that's just me. It's good to stretch your legs.
Murder.
Well, yeah, kinda, sorta. I mean, I'm not that big of a murder hobo. I mean, I don't, just randomly kill townspeople because I have more hit points and bigger weapons. Yeah. Hi, farmer in the field. I'm going to attack you with this battle axe because you exist.
Yeah, dumb.
So, talking about dying quickly, do you remember Millennium's End? It was meant to be this kind of hyper-realistic, near-future sort of special operations sort of thing. It had clear plastic overlays that you put over shapes of characters to figure out where you hit, and use like scatter diagrams and things. Yeah, I had a character in that who was a door kicker. It took ages to make the character. Kitted him out in the absolutely best armor, like the ballistic shields, the full on assault armor. Kicked in the door on the first sort of counter-terrorist encounter we got plugged in the neck with a 22 between the bits of the armor and killed. Bled out. So,
Damn.
yeah, deadly system.
Yeah, the type of game that you play, the level of simulationism will have an effect on TPKs. RuneQuest is a super fun game. However, it uses a hit location system. The hit locations can have debilitating effects on your characters. It can take a while to build a character. And your characters never really accrue more hit points than when they first start the game. You can play 15 sessions, and your characters will not have accrued any significant number of hit points during the game, just because of the way it's set up. And that's a good thing.
It's BRP derived, so it's trying to be more simulationist. But I think all the Gloranthan RPGs since have taken a more story game slant, haven't they?
Oh, have they? The only one I've played is the Mongoose version.
And we played Hero Quest.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Hero Quest. Yeah.
Mongoose divorced the rules from the Gloranthan setting. They had their own setting.
Mm-hmm.
Games Workshop did the same thing when they had the RuneQuest license in the UK. They did Gloranthan materials, but they also did their own sort of post-Romano British setting as well, which was very historical and quite interesting.
Yeah. I guess like one of the deadliest things you could play would be like Morrow Project. Because that was like super duper heavy duty simulationist to the point where it's like, yeah, your characters could bleed out. They had hit locations. They had debilitating effects. And then, of course, there was old Cyberpunk or, any of the storyteller stuff where getting hit and wounded causes debilitating effects and death spiraling and stuff.
Less so than new Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Apple Lane killed your whole party the first time you played. Yeah, so the system is going to have an effect on how fast or when your characters die, if they die. And a GM needs to be ready for that. I mean, it does take a little time to build characters in something like, say, Vampire or Cyberpunk. I famously lost 3 characters in a Vampire the Masquerade game over the course of, several weeks of a campaign. The first one was just, bad luck. The bad guys were better. I'll be honest. That game was kind of bullshit anyway, because it was not the way that typical Vampire the Masquerade is played.
You say that, but there's the way Vampire was described, and there was the way that it was played. There was Interview with the Vampire, and there was Blade.
Well, the way the GM was running this, it was like some kind of cross-time, time traveling vampire simulationist adventure type thing, and I'm just kind of like, oh, well, this isn't really vampire anymore. This is you're using the storyteller system. We're all playing vampires, but you're playing an entirely different game at this point. Which I'm like, fine, I understand the group, and the group is their mentality couldn't handle lots of intrigue and plotting and all this kind of stuff. They were more of the, let's run around, kick the doors in kind of people.
Mm.
But I lost one character to some bad dice rolls. The second character I put together was a lot more well thought out, more interesting, and everybody liked the character. And unfortunately, after a couple of other characters decided to do something stupid, we got attacked by torch-wielding villagers. And for whatever reason, my character was a little bit too slow to get away.
See,
So, yeah.
Torpor is always an option for vampires.
Well, not when they're torch-wielding villagers. So, yeah, my second character got crisped. Third character survived just because the campaign ended. But yeah,
Third character caught fire, fell over, sank into the swamp. But the
Pretty
fourth
much.
character survived.
yeah. And vampire is a really good system to talk about as far as having a low character death count, really. Because people put a lot of time and effort into building a vampire character, and although it is possible to get your character killed in vampire, especially if you're doing a lot of combat shit, you got your coterie is anti Sabbat Squad 4 or something, sent out by the the regent to go and root out a bunch of Sabbat scumbags in an apartment building or something. Yeah, you're probably gonna die pretty quick, even if you're really well kitted out. But for the most part,
we're nearly at time. But Kit's got an interesting point. There's
Okay.
so many other things you could do to characters than kill them.
yeah, the more interesting and fleshed out a character, the more opportunities GMs have to inflict fates worse than death. Yeah, I agree. It depends on the system, really. Unfortunately, with vampire, it's kind of like you're dead or you're alive. I mean, because you already died once, basically. Werewolf, I think, has more possibilities because you have all those weird extra things like the outer world and all that garbage. I don't know. I don't care. Werewolf was supposed to be about one thing, and it ended up being another for me.
Yeah, I had the changing breeds supplement because I'm a super furry.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's like, it had all kinds of weird shit in it. Like
Oh, yeah.
lions, and like
Were
the
sharks.
savannah of Africa. Yeah,
Yeah.
were sharks, like weird stuff like that.
Yeah,
Like,
werecrows.
probably doesn't need all that.
Well, we had Mark Reinhagen on the show a few weeks back, and even he said, that he told them they weren't supposed to add more clans beyond the ones in the basic book, and they did. And I suspect something similar with Werewolf existed. I don't know how much work he actually got to do on Werewolf, or if he, but because Vampire was kind of his baby.
Yeah, but werewolf definitely catered to the furry demographic by adding
Well,
everything.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Werewolf.
I mean, it was before the internet, so although that technically furry stuff did exist in the 80s, it wasn't
As well known.
and
Message
people that
boards.
probably had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, it's like Storyteller is one of those systems that is designed to do one thing, and it's not very good at doing the other. Whereas Storyteller is perfect for Vampire because it's got a lot of dice and a lot of build up and a lot of stuff like that supports that kind of game. It doesn't really play very well for Werewolf, which is supposed to have a lot of action and a lot of savagery and stuff like that, in my opinion.
I think it works okay for Werewolf. For me, it just fell down completely when they tried to apply it to Exalted. Because that thing, if you get into a fight in Exalted, it's just so glacial, the pace at which anything happens. And it's meant to be this, high octane, anime inspired, pull off these amazing moves. But in actual play, it's not that at all.
I think my Godbound game is more exciting.
Yeah, I think it would work better in Godbound, to be honest.
Yeah. But anyway, so there we go, guys. I mean, we're at our hour mark. Total party kills don't have to be the end for your group, especially depending upon the level. Defeat RP is a thing. Death does not have to be the end for a character. It can be. My suggestion is quiz your players. If there's a TPK, ask them. It's like, okay, how attached to these characters are you? Are you willing to start over again? Do you want to build more characters and do like a recovery party to come get your other characters? Are you open to being rescued by, deities or other people or can I do the whole, they bind up your wounds and then throw you in a prison cell type deal?
Yeah. Or are we playing Jack Chick rules?
Yeah. Are we playing Jack Chick rules? It's like, oh no, Blackleaf.
Now that's a hardcore D&D game. If your character dies, you have to die.
Uh-huh. But that's my advice. Grim, do you have advice? Well, actually, you have something that you put up that I'm gonna go ahead and share real quick.
Yeah, I wrote a little booklet called Total Party Kill. It's semi tongue-in-cheek, but it's meant to provide a very loose framework for providing actual deadly levels of challenge, primarily in OSR games. But my advice overall would be non-advice. It would be, it depends. Depends on the game, the group, the individual person, whether you're running a campaign or a one-shot or a mini campaign. You have to take all of these kind of factors into account, and and whether the person will absolutely lose their minds if they lose their character, unfortunately. Play with people you know and trust.
Yeah. Iris?
Exactly. Total party kill is acceptable depending on the game. A lot of people would say that it's acceptable at any time, no matter what the game is, but I think you should have more discretion, and I think you should consider the circumstances of what's happening in the game. I don't believe in the old school 1979 drop falling rocks on unsuspecting fools, or have them fall into a pit of spikes. That's a little silly. But still, the players should be aware that there are possibilities where that can happen. And if they're not cognizant of that, then that's on them. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree. All right, everybody out there in YouTube land. We've hit our time for the day. Grim has to go get some sleep, I think, and Iris, I'm sure, has other things he's got to do, and certainly I do too. Thank you for hanging out with us. You don't?
Hell no. I'll stream for 4 more hours. Who gives a fuck?
Oh, damn. Well, hell, let's go.
Come join me tonight. Come join me tonight for Tabletopless if you like boobs with your dice rolling. They're on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, we have 2 suggestions for streams tonight. Yeah, if you don't catch Grim Jim's Tabletopless, catch my Tuesday with Geeks. It's only an hour long, and We're probably going to have
Do
some
both.
fun. Yeah, do both. Do both. Yeah. Take a break. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you on The Weekend Geek.
Yeah.